In this video, we're just going to go quickly through the answers and the explanations for the National 5 Key Area 3.1 check test. So they asked which line correctly identified examples of carnivores. So we should know from our learning this week that carnivore is an organism who only only gains their energy from other animals. It's not a meat eater, as carnivores can also gain energy from sinew, from bone, from other things like that, not just the meat. So if we go through this, bear, yep. Lion, yep. Goat, no. Goats can eat other things. Lions, yes. Tigers, yes. Rabbits, no. Rabbits eat grass. It's fairly famous. Lettuce, just no. Lions, yes. Wolves, yes. Tigers, yes. I'm going to go for lions, wolves, and tigers. An ecosystem consists of abiotic, not living, factors plus R. So an ecosystem, we talked about the fact that it's essentially your community, so all of the population summed together, all the living organisms, plus the environment, which in this case would be the abiotic factors, so your wind, your rain, your temperature, your pH, but also the habitat. So an ecosystem would not just be the population, because we've said you have to have the community plus the non-living factors. So it's not going to be population. Community, that fits my bill. The community, the habitat, and the non-living factors. I think that's a reasonable definition for ecosystem. But let's see here. Community plus the biodiversity. So that's not right. Biodiversity really is a measure of the kind of variation within your community. If you think about it, it's the number of different species, the number of different populations. So I'm going to go with the community, habitat, and the conditions, basically the climate, being the ecosystem. For competition, it occurs when required resources are in short supply. I'm on board so far. Inter, so that's between different species, competition occurs when individuals of different species, I like it, compete for all of the same resources. Well, that'd be a bit odd if, for example, cows and sheep were both competing for mating opportunities with cows. So really, those different species won't be overlapping in all of the requirements. Different species overlapping in some or even most of the requirements makes a bit more sense. It's a bit less weird. Which of these is an example of a producer? So a mushroom, does it need to use another organism to gain its energy? Not really, but under our kind of guidelines, I wouldn't necessarily say a producer mushroom is a producer. Possibly a poor choice to put that into the quiz. An oak tree does produce its own energy, just using light from the sun through photosynthesis, so that's a good example of a producer. A squirrel eats things like nuts from an oak tree, for example, so it's a consumer, and a lion is a consumer. It's a secondary consumer because it probably eats the squirrel that ate the oak tree. I'm not sure really that there's a lot of overlap in these two's distribution. Which line correctly identifies an example of a community? So we've said before, community is all the populations in an ecosystem. So all the lettuce in a field? Well, no, because I would expect that there are other populations. That's a population, basically. A shoal of herring? Well, no, again, that's one species. All of the grey squirrels in a wood? Again, it's getting quite frustrating. These are all just one species. All of the rabbits? Lettuce, this is looking better. Plants that eat, and all of the foxes that hunt them. That looks a bit more like a community to me because it's got multiple different populations and some of the interactions. It's got the niches for some of them. Which term describes all of the wolves in the Canadian Rockies? That's a population, I think, because that's the wolves, but they've also given me a location, so I'd say maybe that's an ecosystem if that's an option. We'll find out. A group, no, that's not a biological term. Biodiversity, no, you could look at the biodiversity within wolf species, but not really. Community, if we assume that they're talking about one particular kind of subspecies of wolf, grey wolves, for example, then I would say that's probably a population because it's one species. Which of the following best describes a niche? So we're looking at, I like to think of it as the hole that an organism leaves in an ecosystem when you remove it. So a region of the planet distinguished by its climate, that is the biome. Biome is technically no longer a key thing that you need to know about, but we tend to teach anyway, so that's not it. All of the organisms in an area and their habitat. Well, that's probably what we're looking at for a community, so that's not right. The role an organism plays in its community, that's good. I like that one. That's a good definition. Or a living factor that affects biodiversity in an ecosystem. No. So I think a niche is a role an organism plays within the community. Which of these is a type of competition and a correct example? So intra-specific competition is a type of competition, that's good. And if we scan down the list, intra-specific, interspecific, intra-specific, interspecific. So all of them are a type of competition. So we're looking for which one gives a correct example. So that makes it a bit easier. Intraspecific is within one species. So buttercups and daisies, already in this sentence, I know that that's wrong because that's two species. So interspecific, two different species. Two birch trees, well, they're the same species, so that doesn't work. Intraspecific, seals and dolphins, well, no. Interspecific, lions and hyenas, that does work because interspecific is different species. Lions and hyenas are different species, so I'm happy with that. Let's see if I get the answers correct. The internet has timed out. Thank God I've been saved by that. We will assume I got that right. If there's any of those things that still don't make a lot of sense, please do ask and I'll be happy to explain it again.